could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello, everyone. Today we're meeting Victoria Pelletier. She is a corporate executive, a board director, number one selling author, and also a public speaker. Hello, Victoria. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So let's start our conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Well, I will tell you what I thought I was going to do from a career perspective from childhood is far from where I am today. So I thought I was going to be a lawyer. From probably age like 11. I think my mom had me watching too much of the television show LA Law back in the late 80s. I really wanted to do that. So when I went to university, you need to get an undergrad before going to law school. And so I studied psychology and pre-law, thinking both were obviously going to help me be successful in understanding, the people I'd be, potentially defending. But I worked in a bank while I was in university, in their contact center operations, very flexible schedule to allow me to also go to school. And that's when things changed for me. I got promoted through the ranks very quickly, even though I'd held leadership roles as a teenager in places I'd worked, but I got promoted quite quickly. And it was the early days of like digital transformation, digital banking. They didn't even call it digital anything back then. But I loved like there was complexity that came in the business world and creating this like new world in the digital realm and leading people. And that's when I said, I'm going to take a year off before I go to law school. And I got relocated across the country. And I didn't do two things. One, move back out west, which I thought I might, and go to law school. But the second was actually go to law school. And so what I did was follow my passion, which was very much around the leadership of people. And also, I'm not like a status quo kind of girl. I love being challenged. And so the complexities that came in that business environment. And so I've stayed ever since in the business world, getting promoted into an executive role in my early 20s, and staying ever since in the world of what's B2B professional services, lots of financial services still in there, but serving other corporate clients.
Wow, yeah, you had such a long journey, but you learned along the way important lessons for you to really start focusing on what's important in terms of leadership, right? So, what would you say are the values that, kind of like construct who you are as a leader and how you see yourself serving others in terms of, really delivering your best gift that you've been given to serve people? So how do you see yourself, helping others as a result of your leadership?
I've my leadership has evolved pretty substantially over the years. My first leadership role was actually at 14. I became the assistant manager of the shoe store that I worked at in high school.
Mhm.
And I come from a very like some pretty extreme trauma and adversity in my youth. And I think that I was pretty closed off and I put walls around myself. And also being a female executive as well, I was very afraid to like show vulnerability, to show emotions. And so I found out sort of in my mid to late 20s that I had been nicknamed the Iron Maiden. And this was a
Mhm.
result of me not not being authentic to who I was, not showing, I was afraid to show again vulnerability and emotions. So I feel like I wore a mask constantly. And so that was the moment for me where I recognized that I needed to shift the way in which I was showing up. Perception is reality. And although my nickname for my best friend is the turtle, and then I've got a very tough shell or exterior, but I'm really soft on the inside. I needed to let that come through. And so now I embrace what I refer to as whole human leadership. And what
Mhm.
that means is recognize we are whole humans who show up at work every day. And so we can't just leave the personal stuff behind, the lived experiences we've had behind. So recognize that in this like recognize the humanity,
Mhm.
in our colleagues in the workforce. It means being vulnerable. It means being authentic. It means building real relationships with people. Yet that doesn't mean that it comes with a trade-off for like business results. If you were to
Mhm.
ask my team, they'd say I'm tough, but I'm fair. So I set a high, bar and standard that I uphold for myself as well. But that also you can manage my expectations quite well. And so there's a lot of fairness in, how I engage. And long before COVID, I had this philosophy in saying like, there's no schedules or just deliverables. And so I've always been very comfortable with trusting my teams to deliver the requirements to our customers or clients and to one another. You didn't need to ask permission to leave early to go to a doctor's appointment or, take a child to a soccer game kind of thing. So
Mhm.
those are the aspects in terms that I think of now have me known for being a very different kind of leader who's very focused, again, on being a very human leader, leading with empathy. And I'm also exceptionally values driven, high degree of integrity. Let's do the right thing. I'm very focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. And I walk the walk every day. And so that's very important. It's not just talking about it and putting a nice mission or vision statement on the board. Like this is how I lead fully. And so that's how I feel like I can give back to my team and also coach other leaders to, aspire and learn to be more effective leaders.
Definitely. And like you said, you shown by example. This is how people learn when you are the example for them, not just talking about it. And it's important for every one of us recognize that we are, like you said, whole human beings with our own emotions. And maybe like some people had trauma in their life. You never know what's happening with that person, but you have to engage and really get genuinely curious about who that person is in front of you on what their needs, and you have to establish that relationship with your team, not just like saying what you need from them, or what is the purpose of making this work done, but also focusing on their needs and how you can help them accomplish that type of work with all the support that's required, right? Because every one of us has our own unique talents and gifts, and if you can apply those skills in the right direction, if they have everything they need to be as creative or show their expertise in that certain field, that's how the company can profit.
Yeah, and I think it's a very different, like I spend time talking about the future of work, although I've kind of changed the title. I'm recognizing the future is now.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of the things you might think about, like how AI is impacting the way we look at skills, et cetera. But a big part of when I talk about that is around how we need to be leading very differently and the expectation that employees have for a number of things. One, working for companies and working for leaders that are connected to purpose. And so as a leader, it's my job to make sure that they understand how their role connects to the greater being and purpose of the organization. But it also means things like, investing in the development of our team. So, but you actually have to have a conversation, understand what that looks like. And maybe you actually have to unpack some things and help them uncover what does that look like, and develop them for future, recognize potential, and help them grow towards that. And then again, being just really empathetic. I think transparency is, a very big thing that we often don't find in business. So I just think there's this expectation, and I don't like the social media headlines, but like the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, all those things really is just an outcry for a very different kind of leadership and workplace.
Definitely. And also, as employee, you want to feel like this is a safe space for you to share what is it on your mind and how you feel about the work that you do, and what do you see yourself, like what kind of role you want to play in this organization. Maybe you can bring up what is that you're looking for in order to grow. So that kind of conversation with your supervisor has to be like on a very often basis, because this is how we hear and listen and learn from the team, and then we can build something that is beneficial for all of us. but not a lot of leaders, they engage with their employees. And I think maybe now it's become more of a new way of leadership, like you mentioned, but sometimes, people feel like they're not fulfilled or they're unsatisfied in the job that they're doing. And all they think about how to escape it, how to change the position. And what do you think, like, what really like bring this safe space, or I would say maybe establish this emotional connection between co-workers or people like in the workplace? What could be new either technology or practices that could be established, or maybe like a vision of what the best workplace could be in your eyes?
Well, one of the things you said, Anna, for first, I would say around people who are like looking to escape and they're not happy.
Yeah.
I go back to my last comment around purpose. So I think,
Mhm.
and maybe for even for as I described my career path, I didn't become a lawyer because I actually really loved the work I was doing. So find the stuff that brings you joy. I live
Mhm.
by the 80-20 rule. Like, so 80% of the days I wake up, I need to be excited about going into work. There's always going to be 20%, which is a mix of just stuff that has to get done you don't love. There's probably
Mhm.
going to be a colleague you don't really enjoy, but like that's just it. So strive for the 80-20, strive for the stuff that brings you joy, that's
Mhm.
connected to your values and purpose. So I think that's really important just in the role itself, and maybe the company you do it for. And
Mhm.
then to the second part of that question around safety, and tools and different things, I think you hear a lot around diversity, equity, inclusion, and they've
Mhm.
often added belonging to that.
Yeah.
And that's not just about diversity. I like those words specifically because that's about creating an environment in which we feel like we can show up our whole selves every day. That means we bring the baggage, it might be baggage, but we bring with us lived experiences. Maybe it's trauma, it's adversity, it's challenge you've dealt with. Maybe you're neurodiverse and there's things you feel like you've had to hide all these years, but that makes you you and really special. And it's in many cases those things are superpowers.
Yeah.
So the confidence to come in and share those things, creating that kind of safe environment, and that does, I think that's set from the top. So finding
Mhm.
leaders who can do that themselves, again, going back to being vulnerable and emotional and being really transparent. And so I think that's important. And then I do think there's a lot we can do around, let's call them policies, processes, and technology, a
Mhm.
mix of different things, like the things like the annual performance review. I'm not saying that's not beneficial because that's actually what determines like a bonus, for example, for many, but
Mhm.
there needs to be a process around having really regular and consistent feedback that's given. It should not be a surprise if you do have an annual performance cycle, should not be a surprise when you get there what the rating is or how what your bonus is going to look like, because you're having conversation and dialogue throughout the year. And as
Mhm.
a leader, if there's a gap in performance or skill, you're hopefully working with them directly, not only to identify tools and resources or education, or the coaching directly to improve. And so I think that's important. And the employee engagement survey that happens again once a year, I think there's better ways to be tapping into looking at the engagement and satisfaction of our employees, and predicting when they might attrit and seeing how you can save them by doing some things differently. Again, investment in their career, the inclusion and belonging piece, safety, et cetera. So there's a lot more we can do, and different measurements and tools that we can bring in to make work more enjoyable, quite frankly.
Right. No, I agree. And it's a lot of factors involved, but also everything starts from the top. And I think it sets the intention of what kind of culture you're growing in this company, right? So it has to be really done on purpose and be part of the policies, and everything will evolve from there. And also like consistency, like you mentioned, it has to be consistent. And the more people feel that sense of belonging, right? They know they're part of something bigger. The more you remind them why they're doing that, because if they don't have why, people usually lost, and it's easy for them to change their mind. So it has to be something really like deep rooted in their why as well. And also, I know you published the book, and if you can just go over the main topics and what's covered in there so people can learn and look more into detail if they wish to.
Sure. So I had one that came out several years ago. It was a co-authored book called Unstoppable. And that's just like my life's philosophy and mantra. So it was just like serendipity that the publishers would reach to me on that one. I now have two books that are coming out in 2024. One that literally is just released today, kind of by accident. It was actually not supposed to come out till next month, but my distributor released it worldwide. So I made it go live today, and it's on personal branding, which is one of the things I very much attribute some of my career success to and my team success to. And so in that book, I talk about the foundational elements of brand. And part of the reason I decided to write it was, I mean, I'm seen as a leader in the space. When I worked for IBM a number of years ago, LinkedIn ranked me as the #1 social seller worldwide. And so IBM asked me to develop training for its other executives on this. And where I see a lot of people go wrong is they think your personal brand is what you do, you know, the subject matter expertise, what you went to school for, what's the job or function that you're in. But that's only one element, a little bit around what we're talking about around building connection with people. So that's like element number one. Number two is sort of the storytelling. What stories can you share from your past around lived experiences you've had? What are your interests? What are your values? What are some of the passions that you have? And that just, those are things that are like little hooks when you're first meeting with people because you've got some shared commonality. And then the third part of that is foundational element is what makes you different from others. So who's the audience you want to attract? Who are your competitors in the space, and how do you stand out? So figure out what's a differentiator for you. And that superpower I mentioned earlier can be it. Are you like me, someone who's extremely resilient, who's overcome a lot, and that tenacity and drive is what fuels me? Are you neurodivergent and you've had to like deal with that and overcome it? So what's the differentiator? And the last thing is legacy and impact. What do you want to be known for? So I've been really successful in business. I've got names like the turnaround queen, the CEO whisperer. I've been a part of like tons of mergers and acquisition transactions, but that's not going to be on my tombstone. It's going to be the impact I want to have is one, I raised two really good human beings, to the fact that I'm very focused on advocacy for social justice and equity, diversity, equity, inclusion. I want to make workplaces, communities in the world a better place when I leave them than when I came into it. And so those are the elements, but it takes, I refer to it as the 3 acts of engagement. It takes courage, it takes vulnerability, and it takes authenticity in building that. And then the last book is coming out later this year, and it's actually around leadership and culture on the whole human leadership approach that I talk about. And I share some of my failures, and learnings I've had and what I think it takes to be a whole human leader.
Wow. Yes, definitely. It's a lot to process. And I think this book is very like a guide to how you can build that personal brand and what are the elements that come in, so you can just really like be clear on what kind of brand you want to present to the world, and is it really authentic to who you are. And like you said, with you kind of like being authentic and vulnerable and willing to include this personal story of yours in the message, and not just sending more of a professional kind of like position that you may be holding right now. This mix, it creates that touch, that feeling, that humanness, how people connect with each other. So that's the energy that you possess. And that's very unique to what you've been through, what you acquired along the way, and how you build yourself as a person, as a whatever role are you playing right now. And yeah, and I think that's very important for us to focus on, to build that, especially now with this new technology world we live in, everything on social media. And I think it's in our control, it's in our hand to build that brand, because it could be a foundation, a platform for something to come out of it, or maybe to really collaborate with other brands as well. So we have to be intentional on what are we putting out there, what kind of message is going there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really important, as you said, I mean, with technology coming in and automating a lot of functions and tasks, what
Yeah.
gets left behind is the more complex components, the things that like it's exception management, it's problem solving, and it's the engaging with like colleagues and customers. And so
Mhm.
we need to recognize that although we're selling products, services, technology, whatever, at the end of the day, people are doing business with people. And
Yeah.
so we want to do business with people we like and we trust. And so
Mhm.
that's where going back to like brand is really important. And so if all you focus on is being the expert in whatever, like there's many of those people. For most roles or functions, there's many of those people. So like,
Mhm.
how does a company choose to hire you or buy from you if you aren't doing those other things to set you apart around who you are as a unique individual? And again, how is that going to fit and connect with your buyers, you know, the people hiring you, whatever the audience is?
Yeah, and I believe every one of us has the audience to serve. If if we have some kind of gift, there's always a person who's waiting for that on the other end. So you have to be able to kind of like speak that clear message and reach out to people who are looking for you, but you don't know yet. So it has to be clear, because then it's the way for them to connect with you, to really like buy into your personality or the brand that you created, because that's what drives the decision to buy something. It's all emotional, right?
It is. It is. And I think one important sort of caveat though is like you shouldn't aim to be all things to all people
Yeah.
either. Then I think then you go that peanut butter sort of spread across it all. You go too broad. So,
Mhm.
you know, figure out you want to when you're developing your brand, I mean, you're developing the narrative, you're curating it, but it's not like you're a character, an actor on stage. It has to be
Mhm.
authentic, but figure out who the audience is, and you're not going to appeal to everyone. As I said, you know, a vocal advocate around, you know, equity and justice and women's rights and the advancement of like underrepresented minorities. There's people that are going to be far right leaning, and don't worry, we're not going to have a political conversation, but like, I'm
Yes.
not going to be their cup of tea because
Yeah.
we have opposing views. Now, I get along with everyone, but still, some people will make a choice that doesn't resonate with them, and that's fine. And so, I'd encourage your listeners to recognize that. Figure out, you know, what are the goals and objectives that you have as it relates to building a brand? Is it becoming a thought leader? Is it to like I'm a public speaker? Do you want to go down that path and have people recognize you and invite you? Do you want to just get hired? Do you want people buying from you? And like then figuring out who's that audience, and then what storytelling do you want to do? Authentic storytelling do you want to do to differentiate yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And the more we clear on what that audience is, the better message we also can craft, because it's going to speak to them directly and they're going to hear you. Whoever is that person for you, they're going to hear you. So they would know that you're the right person for them. So it's like we shouldn't be worried about that, but really like clear on what we stand for, where we're coming from, and what we want like to deliver to that audience of ours. And everything will take care of itself. But also, like, sometimes people find it's hard to really like focus on their own mental and physical well-being, and really like invest into building yourself, into becoming a healthier version of who they can be. And I think it's important to really prioritize that over everything, because this is the foundation for the better life to emerge from this, right? So like, how can we like focus on bringing that mindfulness and understanding that my own mental well-being is a priority, if I can just dedicate time every single day in some kind of self-care practices that will help me to become a better version of myself. So is there something that helped you along the way to really like become stronger because of the choices that you made and the daily practices that you integrated in your lifestyle?
There's a few things. So one around becoming as like resilient as I am.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you can be like quite resilient. For me, there's a little bit that's DNA in that like fight or flight. I'm a fighter. So like that's the DNA part. But I think you can get better and learn how to be more resilient and flex that muscle. So for me, that means first be really clear on goal and objective, whether that's around health and wellness, whether that's career, whether it's around relationships, whatever the goal is. The next thing is to be incredibly self-aware and self-reflective, maybe around how you react to things, how you're thinking about things, the
Mm-hmm.
emotions you're having. So sit with that. And if you're unable to do that, that's where I would encourage you to seek help and professional help with that. The next is to start to build a plan and start to model the thoughts, the actions, the behavior that you need to take steps on along the way. And the next is giving yourself permission to fail. Two steps, forward, one step back sometimes is fine. One foot in front of the other. Like that. So for me, those are some of the things around just being resilient. And then I do have daily practices as well for me. So the gym, I'm a bit of a fitness fanatic. I have worked out like 6 days a week for much of my life. There was probably a few years where my travel schedule was so insane that but I block my calendar for early in the morning so people don't schedule me for early morning meetings because I work out first thing in the morning and then
Mm-hmm.
need to get home and shower and get ready. So
Right.
by exception, do I like schedule something earlier? But that's my time where not only am I doing things that are great for my body in terms of being like physically active and training, weight training,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually my time where I spend a lot of time thinking and learning. So that's a moment where I am actually really reflective around the day before, the day ahead of me. And I say learning because I'm also like an avid learner and reader, mostly through listening now, through podcasts and through
Mm-hmm.
audiobooks. But I also do that while I'm working out. That sets me up for the day. So that's a sacred thing for me. And I just make time for it and block it in my calendar.
Yeah. So because it's so important for you that you know this is a priority and everything else comes around it. And that's important for us to understand that, we're the one creating that lifestyle for ourselves. And that's a decision that has to be made. And once you start prioritizing, you're gonna make that decision and block it in your calendar. And that's just a new way of you kind of like building that character, and you doing that intentionally, and you showing with your actions that this is important for you, and the more will come. It's not just talking about it, but we have to make that action. And I think like it's hard for a lot of people because of different excuses why they can't do it, or because of lack of time, we're always so tired. And but again, like every change, I think first 30 days to make a habit, a new habit, right, in our daily routine, that's how long it takes. Do you give yourself that month to try and see how you're gonna feel, right? Because that's what we need. We need to really like show ourselves the evidence of why we're choosing this different route or creating that new neural connection, right? So if this is something that is beneficial for me and I feel so much better and I see the results of me doing that, then I'm going to continue doing that. But sometimes people quit too early in the game and not giving themselves the chance to even see the result, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm I have like I don't need a vision board, by the way. Like all the where it started the new year. So there's some people, and if that's what you need or works for you, great. For me, I'm very good at, again, when I have something in my mind, a goal or objective, I stick to it. I live by the the motto also. I said unstoppable is one, but the other's no excuses.
Yeah.
My children hate that. But it really is around we have a choice. And so if you're choosing not to work out, that's also a choice. And the other thing is where I have this saying that where there's conviction, there's capacity. So if you have conviction behind something, whether it's being fit, whether it's learning something new, whether it's developing a side hustle or passion project, there's your 9 to 5 and there's your 5 to 9, and like you make choices over how you're going to spend time. And so when people say, "Oh, I don't have time to work out," or whatever, like I will challenge them greatly over that and put in, if you really have conviction behind it, you're going to make space and capacity for it.
Yes, definitely. I mean, everything could be created. And like you said, the conviction is the most important part. And are you willing, and how much sacrifice you can get into, like, what is it that you desire to see in your life? And if it's really that important for you, you will find time. And this is something that is, a lot of people, successful people, will show it to you. So it's already been proven to work. The thing is, are you willing to make that decision or not? And no decision is also a decision. So it's up to you.
Exactly.
Yes, and I'm so glad we had that conversation today. For those who would like to find you online and to learn more about the book, where can they go?
So I have a website, which is victoria-pelletier.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes, so I won't spell it all out. But from there, certainly information about the books, around the keynotes that I do, but also for people who would want to connect with me on other platforms like LinkedIn or Instagram, they can do that from there as well.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna include in show notes. And as we close today, what would be the thought for our listeners?
Uh, I would tell everyone that you are the CEO of whether it's your brand, your career. So completely in charge of that. You will define whatever your version of success looks like and unstoppable life looks like for you. And so to go for it and lean into the things that make you uncomfortable, because without the discomfort, I think the challenge, the growth won't come. So be unstoppable in whatever version, whatever that means to you, but live with a life of no excuses and incredible intention.
Yes. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.